Welcome to the final edition of Inside Coverage on Yahoo here. The how and the why, any and everything you need to know about the National Football League, the final edition of 2025. I should have finished that sentence. Not of all time. We're going to be back like in 2026, as in next Monday, to tell you all about the playoffs as the bracket will officially be set. But this is our goodbye to 2025. I say our, not just mine. Jori Epstein is here, as always, for our end of the week preview show. Ben Fawkes with us as well. I considered, which I used to do on DirecTV for the Red Zone channel when our show was on the 31st, or on Total Access back in the day on NFL Network, I would come out in a tux today. I actually thought about wearing a tux today. Ben, you got that wide-eyed, like, sure, wow, he's going to wear a tux. But then I realized, I looked at my watch and I went, oh, wow, we have a show in 10 minutes and I haven't showered. So why don't I just throw a hat on? Because a tux would be a little much on very short notice. Hi, guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And thank you for letting us know about the intent of the tux. It's the thought that counts, right?
Of course. I thought you were going to say thank you for telling us that you didn't shower.
Hat, so.
I don't have a top hat. I could have worn, I don't have any good hat. Like this is just a Syracuse hat. And as we sit here and record this show, Syracuse has lost yet another home basketball game, this one, to Clemson. Another chance to win at the end, but they couldn't knock down a shot. I don't have like the top hat. I could have worn, I have a Stetson from many years ago, similar to the one Deion Sanders was wearing watching Shador at the game this past Sunday. But does anyone, Ben, do you own a tux?
I do. I have worn it once for my own wedding, and I hope to wear it again next year because it was a custom tux that barely arrived right before the wedding and gave me a lot of stress.
Okay. I own a tux as well. It actually fits. I had to wear it a couple of weeks ago, but I don't own the top hat. All right. I'm just meandering here. Do you guys have good New Year's plans? Jori, what are you doing?
Nothing particularly crazy. Might see some cousins, might get a local hike in tomorrow, you know.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, It's one of those things where you shoot texts off to sources because I'm like working on my ballot. So I'm like, hey, what do you guys think about this? And then I'm like, give me a call when you have time, just being like, I'm going to pretend I didn't make plans because they're definitely going to call exactly when any plans happen.
But then maybe you might have had a couple of glasses of champagne and the conversation's that much more fun.
I feel like you overestimate my tolerance, but I love the thought.
It's like, the anxiety, I'm talking myself, not you, the anxiety to ask that question that might be a little bit awkward. A couple of glasses of champagne, you ask it. Ben, what about you?
At the in-laws, you can see this nice United States of America, not my normal office today. Okay. So just, there's the wide shot. Just here tonight, probably staying over, and doubles as my wife's birthday. So we got the birthday plus New Year's all wrapped up into one day.
Happy birthday to your better half. That's fantastic. I don't have it. I might go watch college football with some friends and then dinner with the neighbors, and it'll be a nice low key New Year's Eve because, and I'm going to sound old, it's kind of amateur night. Everything's overpriced. Kids don't drink and drive. Just be safe. Believe me, there are a few things worse than waking up on January 1st to start a new year and feeling like garbage, hot or otherwise, from the night before, and then going, this is how I start a productive new year. There's nothing worse than that, whether you have to call sources or not. So we're not going to do that. We are going to get to football, I promise. Before we preview the games, it means something to us, Week 18, and there are only a handful of them. Let's get the news out of the way from Wednesday afternoon. No earth-shattering coaching or GM news, nothing like that, but there was a move made by a GM, the GM being Brian Gutekunst, to claim Trevon Diggs. So Trevon Diggs, and Jori, you've got some good insight on this, waived yesterday, Tuesday, by the Cowboys at the very end of his contract. Only had one game of guaranteed money remaining. Ends up with his old buddy Micah Parsons, his BFF on the Cowboys side of football, who is already up there rehabbing the knee injury. Micah's tweeting how happy he is about it. Trevon Diggs is a Packer. Jori, your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I was saying back in October that I thought this should happen because I was kind of like, all right, it was clear back then that Trevon Diggs and the Cowboys were having some issues. I thought should happen before the trade deadline, even if financially it might not have made as much sense for the Green Bay Packers. But this was a team who was no longer maximizing a player who no longer wanted to do what the team wanted him to do in terms of the way he was rehabbing, the way he was getting into shape, even the scheme he was running. We talked earlier this week on the show about how Trevon Diggs believes he is better suited for a man defense, and they were running a zone, and he didn't think that was playing to his and other skill sets. And then you go to Green Bay, where his best friend Micah Parsons is.
I think Micah Packer
and
works.
Micah Parsons, the Packer, all the things. And I recognize Micah's injured now, but obviously with the contract he signed, he's there for years to come. So he's got one of his best friends there. They were very close in Dallas. And on top of that, Derek Ansley, who is the defensive pass game coordinator for the Green Bay Packers, was Trevon's cornerbacks coach when he was in Alabama. So I first found that out about Derek Ansley back in, I think it was several years back. I was writing this story because Trevon Diggs transitioned from receiver to cornerback in college, and I did a story on how Alabama almost had Devontae Smith play cornerback for a little bit of time. They needed an emergency corner. They transitioned Trevon, and they were working on, hey, can you just be that guy in a pinch? But Trevon's ball skills, which showed the year he had 11 interceptions, were really the big factor in that. So this is a coach who intimately understands Trevon Diggs and his skill set because he was part of the staff that decided to and effectively transitioned him over to cornerback. Now, I'm not saying Trevon's going to automatically walk in and be a starter, but I think we all know Green Bay could use some cornerback help. That's been a problem for them throughout the season. Their defense is struggling, and now you have a guy who has some familiarity. How much this will do down the stretch, I don't know. I think this is more something that if they like him and they want him for next year, they can figure it out, the guarantees. But I can tell you Micah Parsons is happy, and I think in terms of Trevon getting back on track and back on, hey, I got to do what the team needs me to do, having a coach who was a mentor to him back in the college days when, by the way, he was with Nick Saban and it was a get with the program or you're not going to be with the program situation. I think that might be a good influence for him to be around right now. And
the Packers are locked into the 7 seed. They are playing the Vikings this week in Week 18. That game is in Minnesota, obviously. The Vikings not playing for much here, if anything, for that matter. Nothing. They've been eliminated and were a couple of weeks ago. The Packers will go on the road in Wild Card Weekend to either Chicago or Philadelphia. The results of the other games, obviously, pending there. As for the Packers quarterback situation, it should be noted that Desmond Ridder was signed back to the practice squad today. So, obviously, if it's Malik Willis, and we'll talk to him a little bit later, he is still nursing a sore shoulder, so maybe he doesn't go. The Packers trying to get to the wild card round. That is the most important thing, and they have one more arm in the bullpen now in a former third-round pick of the Falcons out of Cincinnati. He's a Bearcat, Desmond Ridder. So normally we pick 5 games, the games that mean the most to us. We're going to go with the 3 primetime or standalone games here because those are the quote-unquote win-and-in games, although the NFC South game is not necessarily a win-and-in game. Let's do those games, and then we're going to, dip our toe in the pool of what are the other storylines that really get us going, things to keep an eye on Week 18. Let's open up here with the NFC South game. This is going to be the first game of the weekend. It is a Saturday, 4:30 Eastern time game, and that game is going to be on ESPN and ABC with Chris Fowler and Dan Orlovsky and Louis Riddick and Katie George and Peter Schrager on the call. It reminds us, it's a cast of thousands, like that old scene in Naked Gun with the 18 people in the booth at Dodger Stadium. Like that. So the Panthers win the NFC South with a win or a Falcons win over the Saints on Sunday. The Buccaneers need to win this game Saturday and have either the Falcons lose or tie on Sunday with the Saints. So it isn't a true win and in. There's no scenario in which the Buccaneers can clinch the division on Saturday alone. They need help from a Falcons loss on Sunday. The Panthers have not played a win-and-in game in over a decade. It was 2014 when they beat the Falcons in Week 18 or Week 17, then 34-3, and they won the NFC South. Neither of these teams on paper really should be in the postseason. The Panthers have a negative 67-point differential, which is 23rd in the NFL, the worst for any team that's 500 or better. And if the Buccaneers get in, they will do so with a losing record. If they win, they get to 8-9, and they make the playoffs with a losing record. And they'd be the 5th team, non-strike season, to do that, get in with a losing record. Now, we could break down offense and defense and this and that. To me, what's so interesting about this game isn't necessarily which team makes the playoffs. That is fun. Obviously, these teams want to live to play again in week 19. But the layers in this game, let's just run through it. If the Panthers, let's go to the Bucs first. Jori, if the Bucs lose, they would finish 1-8 down the stretch. Todd Bowles, right now 34-33 in 3 seasons, 3 trips to the playoffs right now, and with only 1 victory. Baker has 1 year of guaranteed money left. It's $40 million next year, $51 million cap hit. In other words, this would be the offseason in which you look towards extending Baker, which 2 months ago seemed to be inevitable. So what if the Bucs lose? To me, the future, meaning 2026, is far more at stake here than, say, a wild card game against the 5 seed.
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that, Andrew, because Todd Bowles was asked in one of his press conferences this week about, does he call anyone for advice, and does he kind of like reach out to his network of people? And he was like, no, I've been through this enough to know, like, if you get good advice, you listen, but otherwise you got to keep moving. And I felt like there was a little undertone there of, I know what I'm doing, I know how to be the head coach, and I know that I am capable of leading this team this year and beyond. I think when you look at it, this is a Bucs team where they're 22nd in offense, they're 20th on defense, 18 and 23rd if you want to go scoring numbers. But this is not a team that has excelled on either side of the ball. Yes, they've had some injuries. Yes, Baker Mayfield's got the shoulder and he's got the knee, but I still think that there is something about how did they move in the direction that they're moving in. And that's what really, to me, is the story of this game is, yes, Carolina and Tampa on paper have some similarities of what they've achieved, but when you look at where they were in their life cycle and their team life cycle, as you said, in terms of Baker's guaranteed money, kind of the veterans they have on the team, this is a Carolina team where expectations were low and they've ascended. And this is a Tampa team where you would have thought that they would have dominated the division. Maybe if Atlanta was stronger coming in and Michael Penix stayed healthy, they would have been a challenger, and they've really taken a dip. And as much as you don't want to be victim to recency bias, you do have to understand what are the waves and what are the currents that are impacting these teams and could impact them into next year. And so I think when it really comes down to it, you say, well, this is a team in Tampa that actually should feel the urgency a lot more. They lost to Carolina 2 weeks ago. This is their only chance to guarantee themselves a spot in. And so then you say, okay, Carolina, in some ways, I'm curious how you motivate them from a psyche standpoint, because even though I'm not saying they don't care about their jobs and they're not professionals, I do think that the urgency should be higher and felt more intensely in Tampa right now.
Yeah, and to Jori's point, like they're two teams kind of going in the same direction, which is nowhere fast. I mean, Tampa Bay, I think a lot of earlier in the season, right, you thought, okay, they had that built-in excuse of they had the offensive line injuries. Mike Evans went out. I was like, all right, when all the pieces come back, this is going to be that team that has continually won the NFC South. And instead, they've just gone the opposite way. They keep losing some of these games. They've now, they lost 7 of 8 outright. They've lost 8 straight games against the spread, which is really difficult to do. This game, they were a 3-point favorite or a 3.5-point favorite against the Panthers in Tampa Bay. Sharps took that 3.5. It's now down to 2.5 at a lot of books. And this is one where, again, they're both, I guess the easiest way to describe it is two not very good teams, right? The Bucs are 20th in DVOA, the Panthers 24th. And if you boil it down, Tampa Bay is really a little bit better on kind of offense, defense, and special teams by the advanced metrics than the Panthers. But again, they're both 20th and 24th, nothing to really write home about. We've seen Baker Mayfield regress down the stretch over this course of the season, whereas he was in the MVP discussion, right, in the early portion of the season. And it really looked like, okay, Tampa Bay, they're positioning themselves for a playoff run, to now, are they even going to make it in? And so we've kind of seen that, whereas the Panthers, they've really been a team that's been alternating between kind of good games and bad games when they've gone against the elite teams, the Jaguars, the Patriots, as odd as it is to say that the Jaguars is an elite team, the Bills, the Niners, last week against the Seahawks, they've gotten blown out and they've scored 10, 13, 9, 9, and 10 points. So the offense hasn't really been there. The defense has given up more points. But they also did beat the Packers and the Rams in two very odd games. So they have won a couple games against the good teams. For the most part, they've lost. But Bryce Young, we just haven't really seen overall that kind of ascension, right? We saw Drake May last year in his rookie year, and you could make some excuses, offensive line, lack of weapons. We've seen that kind of clear ascension in the second year. And now for Bryce Young in, I believe, his third year, just hasn't really happened to the same extent. So this is a team that relies on Ted McMillan. I was going through when we'll talk about the Steelers game as well. The Panthers are so reliant on him. He is the number one receiver with 929 yards receiving. Their number two is Jalen Coker, who is a little over 340 yards receiving. So it's all Ted McMillan. If they can't get that running game going and Bryce Young doesn't connect on passes, there isn't really much for the offense to hang his hat on. So ultimately, it's kind of two not very good teams. You're not really sure what you're going to get from either team. It's one I would definitely say good luck betting. I think the one thing that people agreed on was probably the Panthers at +3 or +3.5 was good to take. But now at under a field goal, this is kind of anyone's guess.
You know, Ben, I'm glad you mentioned Bryce Young, because I also had a third point here written. Jori, May 1, I think, kind of hangs over this game as well. That will be the deadline for the Panthers to pick up Bryce Young's fifth-year option. He's played some good quarterback this year. He has his moments. We talked about it last week. No quarterback in the NFL has more game-winning drives the last two seasons than Bryce Young, believe it or not. But they are 27th in the NFL in scoring, and they've got two really good backs in Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard. Matter of fact, they're the only team in the NFL with two backs on their roster that both ran for 1,000 yards the previous season in 2024. They've got Ted McMillan. Obviously, they don't maybe have the other weapons other than Ted McMillan, but I kind of need to see it from Bryce Young, because if I don't, Jori, there are going to be some interesting conversations in Carolina the next few months. The new league year begins mid-March, and then you have until May to decide whether or not you want to lock in on that fifth year.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because like right now over the cap is projecting that to be $26.5 million based off Bryce's draft status as well as his play time. Because it's kind of like, how much did you play? Are you a Pro Bowler, et cetera? To me, 26.5 compared to what any kind of extension would look like. I'm not saying you should do it if you really don't feel confident, but if you think he is going to at least be a league average quarterback or slightly above average, 26.5 is a pretty good deal for a fifth-year option these days. So it's interesting how the market inefficiency of the quarterback position and how much more guys are getting on their second deals, I think should play into this. Because then also, if you think there's going to be a chance at an extension, I mean, you're probably not getting an extension for 30. You're probably going to have to do 40s into 50s if you think he's actually going to take off to be the player worth the second extension. And then you say, well, if you can get 1 year at 26, it allows you to have kind of an offsetting year in the contract where the overall value of the new money can be a lot and you not feel like your cap is taken up. So I get that he's not quite there yet, but I do think that the cost should influence the decision.
It's a great point. The economics here certainly matter. You're locking into a contract, but it is not an oppressive contract in year number 5. It buys you time. You always have the franchise tags beyond that if need be. Obviously, that kind of played into the whole Miami thing with Tua as well. So, yeah, it's not the end of the world. Also, you could take insurance on that fifth-year option. Not every team does do that, but there are other factors there as well. All right, that is the early game on Saturday. And then game of the year, maybe, just maybe. I mean, we've said that 100 times the last few weeks. It is our weekly game of the year. It's the Seahawks at 13-3, the 49ers at 12-4. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Lisa Salters, Laura Rutledge, the Monday night crew calling this on Saturday night. The winner gets the NFC West title and the number 1 seed and home field in the NFC. The loser is on the road as either the 5 or the 6 seed. If it's the Seahawks losing, they are the 5. Period. The Niners have the potential to fall down to the 6. But if the Seahawks lose, they will go to either Tampa or Carolina. This is really interesting here, only the 4th final week game since seeding began in 75, so 50 years ago, with the number 1 seed on the line. But we had one last year with Minnesota and Detroit, obviously an in-division game in the NFC North, won by the Lions. Here's why this game is so great. Not only are they both undefeated in primetime, but they are both, Jori, riding 6-game winning streaks in the NFC, longest streaks in the NFC. And during those winning streaks, the Niners are scoring the most points in the NFL, and the Seahawks are allowing the fewest points in the NFL. So what say you, Jori?
Yeah, I think it's a great question when Brock Purdy is coming off back-to-back 5-touchdown games, but then you go up against Seattle. It's the whole, very movable object against stoppable force. Maybe I mix those up, but I do think that you kind of have these two these two opposing forces, and they can't both continue on the trends that they've been on. I think I'm interested to see whether George Kittle will be available. He was out last week with an ankle injury after earlier in the season missing 5 games with a hamstring injury. You can hear the sirens in the background because New York City is so concerned about George Kittle's availability for this game ahead of the Super Bowl in San Francisco.
We couldn't end the year without a siren on the pod.
Oh, you'll probably get more before they're over, the joys of living across from a police and fire station. But I do want to know, George Kittle did not practice leading into the Week 17 game. He didn't play with that ankle, and he was a limited participant at the beginning of this week. And so I think that we should feel encouraged that he might play, and also encouraged that the San Francisco offense might be okay either way. Really, the question to me is, San Francisco offense and Seattle defense is good on good. Seattle offense is good, but a little inconsistent, and San Francisco defense is plucky and doing a little more than they should, but they definitely are super injured, and I don't really trust them. So it'll be really interesting. But again, one of my favorite storylines of this game is Sam Darnold, for the 2nd straight year, is part of a team, different teams, 2 different teams on both sides of the ball for the final week, but it is the NFC title, the number 1 seed on the line, and the bye. And last year, Sam Darnold quarterbacked the Vikings with that opportunity against the Detroit Lions. Now he's got the Seahawks against the Niners. And this is an opportunity for Sam, who has already rewritten his in-season narrative, to really try and rewrite his end-of-season narrative, because his Week 18 and wildcard play last year for Minnesota ended up contributing to them not going with him as their full-time or continued starter. So it'll be interesting.
It's good we can start the old year with that from last year in January with that Vikings-Lions game. But yeah, I'm also glad Jori took the first stab at that immovable object versus irresistible force, because I also would have screwed that up too. This is a game the Niners opened. This opened either Pick'em or Niners -1. It has flipped. Seahawks now a 1.5 point favorite at a lot of sports books, and early money a little bit backing Seattle, but we still obviously have a long way to go until kick. Seahawks have been really good as a road favorite this season. Obviously, a lot of East Coast games, 5-1 against the spread as a road favorite, if indeed they do close as a road favorite here. They're number 1 in defensive DVOA, and to Jori's point, they're 29th against tight ends. So if George Kittle plays, that is a big advantage for the Niners. Obviously, he's a very good receiving tight end, very good blocking tight end, and Seattle has struggled against tight ends. The 49ers now are also the 2nd-ranked offense. Seahawks down to 11th. So to Jori's point as well, Seahawks a little better earlier in the season. They've kind of fallen off, and just digging into the numbers a bit, Sam Darnold, he basically is very good at getting getting on his first read and not being knocked off of it. But he just hasn't played well, basically, the last 7 games, starting with that 4-interception game against the Rams. He actually is a QBR. Again, I always have to say Frank's favorite stat. I can only use it when he's not on with us. He has a QBR of 38.1. 50 is average. And that 38.1 is the same as Justin Fields had this season, which would be about 27th in the NFL. So those last 7 games, he really has not played the same way that we remembered those Seahawks teams crushing the Commanders, blowing out some of those teams, the Saints, right? Earlier in the season where the game was over in the first quarter or halftime. The defense has still been very good. The offense hasn't quite been up to that level that we saw on the other side. For the 49ers, even they've had obviously Bosa out, Mikael Williams out, Fred Warner out. And because of that, they're 29th in pass rush win rate and last in pressure rate. And so basically, unless they can get pressure on Sam Darnold, you figure that the Seahawks should be able to score a little more than they have been in the past. And then the injuries are huge, right? I think Trent Williams and George Kittle fall under that same bucket, right? Of do you want to push it? I think especially for Trent Williams, an older player where you know you're going to give him at least weeks, right? If you rest him this week and then you have the playoffs, obviously if you win, potentially 3 weeks rest, and Kittle's the same thing. I think it's more likely Kittle plays than Trent Williams, but the 49ers are going to have a hard time going where they want to get, and that is the Super Bowl in San Francisco, unless both of those players are healthy. So there's a chance maybe too, if Kittle's 50-50, you also rest him just knowing, hey, we need him healthy in the playoffs. This game obviously determines a lot, but like the Niners can beat theoretically anyone, anywhere. Those 2 players are so important for them. So I think that's huge. And then Rashid Shaheed as well. We saw him with that concussion. Whether or not he plays is another big thing for the Seahawks. And their left tackle, Charles Cross, hasn't played the last 2 games, and his backup, Josh Jones, was just on the injury report today as well. So potentially a cluster injury there at left tackle. Again, might not matter against the 49ers if they have no pass rush, but generally you don't want third-string tackles or guards being bumped out in the most important game of the year. Just an unbelievable game, though. Really excited to watch it. I do lean the Seahawks because of that, but the 49ers and Brock Purdy have been playing really, really well. We saw that offense against the Bears pass rush that didn't get a lot of pressure, and what Purdy did. So I think, that'll be a big determining factor in the game.
Trent Williams thing is huge for me. If he was going to play, I'd pick the 49ers, period, full stop. I still am leaning 49ers for recreational purposes only at the end of the year, although this will be in 2026 by the time the game is kicked. I'm going to go with the 49ers. We're not actually contractually obligated to make picks, but I'm going to make one right there. Who do any of us want in the Ravens and Steelers? I mean, the answer is neither. But we'll tell you all the good stuff about that game. We'll tell you what Aaron Rodgers said today about 2026. And is Joe Burrow going to give Myles Garrett a sack? What did he say today in Cincinnati? Coming up next on Inside Coverage. It's Inside Coverage on Yahoo. I mentioned here, hi, it's Andrew, it's Jori, it's Ben, that we would look at the games that are kind of the win-it-in games or the big window games. There are 3 of them. And even though the NFC South really isn't a win-it-in game, the AFC North game is. Either the Ravens get in as the North champion or the Steelers get in as the North champion. The other one is going home, can't be a wild card. This game is game 272, meaning the final game of the season. NBC on Sunday night, Tarico Collinsworth and Melissa Stark. Ravens are 8-8. Steelers are 9-7. Ravens, for the first time in franchise history, are trying to win 3 consecutive division titles. But the Ravens have never played in a winner-take-all, end-of-the-season game. Now, the Steelers have. And this one took me down memory lane today when looking up this game. The Steelers did it back in 2014. When they played the Bengals. Does anyone remember that game? It was at Heinz Field. Steelers won it 27-17. That was the game in which Le'Veon Bell got hurt because Reggie Nelson went at his knees. And then Mike Tomlin and Reggie Nelson, the safety Reggie Nelson, number 20 for the Bengals, exchanged words after the game. Tomlin said he was talking about he said, she said. I don't know what he was talking about. And there was also a moment in that game, late in the game of the fourth quarter, when Mike Mitchell, notorious headhunting safety, or at least accused of that, of the Steelers, took out A.J. Green, concussed A.J. Green. The Bengals, they did make the playoffs, even though they lost the game, but they lost the following week to Peyton Manning and the Colts. A.J. Green couldn't play in that game because he was still concussed. So these two teams don't like each other. But Jori, if you thought the NFC South game has storylines, this one has storylines. It's quite literally, in the eyes of some, loser goes home, meaning the coach goes home. Now, I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I don't think Mike Tomlin is getting fired. Matter of fact, I know he's not going to get fired. It's only if he wants to leave, then maybe he could leave. As for Aaron Rodgers, let's go to the Twitter of our friend and your bridesmaid, your BFF, Brooke Pryor, today with Aaron Rodgers in the Steelers locker room.
You still kind of have that drive right now, thinking about the what ifs and how much better things could be.
Listen, I mean, I'm thinking about this week, but obviously I'm 42 years old and I'm on a one-year deal, so you know what the situation is. Whenever the season ends, I'll be a free agent, so that'll give me a lot of options if I still want to play. I mean, a lot of options, but there'll be options. I would think maybe one or two if I decide I still want to play. But I've enjoyed this experience, and everybody in Pittsburgh has been fantastic to me on and off the field, and it's really what I was hoping for this experience. It's been even better than I was hoping.
You know what I love the Aaron Rodgers turning modest mid-sentence, like caught himself. I'm going to have a lot of options. But I'm going to catch myself. I'll have options. Like I am self-aware here that I'm 42 years old. Regardless, I don't know, Jori, that I can remember a game with this many potential career-altering storylines.
Yeah, it's a great point, Andrew, and I think it's why our editors texted me like 12:15 in the morning Monday. So as the Sunday night games were winding down, being like, Pittsburgh just tried calling you. If you don't want to call me back, just tell me you're going to book your flight to Pittsburgh. I'm like,
wake up. It's really hard to fly New York to Pittsburgh. Those flights suck. You want to drive. It's the turnpike. Just say you're going to go. Thank you.
Anyway, yes, there are a ton of storylines, and it was interesting because also I'll note that when we were originally thinking through this, I went to the earlier Ravens-Steelers game, the one in Baltimore this year, and we were kind of like, well, which one do we think if we plan to go to just one? Because the second one, someone might already have the playoffs figured out. We might already have clarity on the coaches, and the first one we knew was still going to be playoff relevant. But now it just gets to the point where the stakes are so high, and of course, as we know, this is high because Pittsburgh did not get the job done against Detroit last week, when had they won, they would have been able to just take the division then. But this is a game that could be the last game of Aaron Rodgers' career, 4-time MVP, whether or not people like him off the field, and I think he was charming in that little quote, then it could be, and I totally agree with you, Andrew, that I love the whole, okay, maybe I don't have a lot of options, but I should have one or two as a 4-time MVP, and I'm like, yeah, I think you'll have options if you want them. But I think also, when you look at this, to me, it's not, do the Steelers want to get rid of Mike Tomlin? It's, does Mike Tomlin want something new? That, to me, is going to be the question. And with John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson, it's, well, what do they want? Like, if they're really getting to the point where the tension's too high, and I'm not totally convinced they're there, but I think that's a question, and it seems like Lamar Jackson is going to play this week. He's back to practicing full after some weeks of limitations. What would that look like? So to me, this is just fascinating because when I was at that game earlier this month, it was one of Rodgers' best games of the year. He looked like he was turning back the clock. He turned 42 a few days earlier, and even with that was rushing in for a touchdown. We got the discount double check. He and DK were great. It was one of DK Metcalf's 2 100-yard games the entire season, and TJ Watt had yet to have his lung punctured and need surgery. Now, TJ Watt might be back this week, but to me, there's still this question of, okay, DK and TJ and some of these different moving pieces. I'm not of the belief, as some are, that DK is the answer to this offense. I think from a production standpoint, he's actually been pretty inconsistent this year, but I do definitely agree that the defensive attention he commands matters. And even against Detroit, one of their winning formulas was, well, why don't we just run all over the other team? And this was, I know the Lions were injured, but still a good defense that they were going up against, and they ran for, I believe, over 200 yards. And so it was kind of one of those things where that was actually probably the best option. But if you have no one to worry about in the passing game like DK, it's much harder to get your running backs going. And oh, by the way, you're missing your big tight end now.
Yeah, Ravens opened a 3-point favorite. They're up to a 3.5-point favorite in Pittsburgh. A little surprising line potentially to some. Ask an odds maker today. That's kind of hedging a bit. If Lamar plays, I think the line would move up a bit, probably 4.5 or higher if Lamar plays. If it is Tyler Huntley, it'll probably stay there at 3.5. But look, we just saw Tyler Huntley the last couple of games, much like when Malik Willis came in for the Packers in relief of Jordan Love, looked great. And so there certainly is that question of a hurt Lamar Jackson who maybe can't run as much versus a healthy Snoop Huntley. And Snoop Huntley has looked great in those games, getting the Ravens to the point where this game does matter, and it is a win-and-get-in game. And ultimately, we don't usually get a chance to see kind of how an offense looks without arguably its most important player for the Steelers with DK Metcalf. But we did last week against the Browns, and it wasn't particularly pretty. Now, the Browns defense is awesome.
I'm going to cut you off, Ben.
Andrew?
Ben, it was ugly.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to cut him. They're bad without him. And without Calvin Austin, they're bad. Now, they're going to get potentially Isaac Seumalo back, right? But they're not going to get Darnell Washington back, obviously. They not good without those weapons. I'm sorry, sir. I cut you off. I just had to add color.
I was going to say you're lucky you get to watch that defense every week, because I did watch a lot of that game. It was one of in the 4 box on Red Zone, but that they completely shut down the Steelers. And I think ultimately the Steelers, like we were saying earlier with the Panthers, they're so reliant on one receiver, right? DK Metcalf is their leading receiver with 850 yards. Their second leading receiver is Pat Freiermuth, third Kenneth Gainwell, fourth Darnell Washington, who, as you said, is hurt. Calvin Austin has 317 yards. Their second leading receiver has 300 yards on the season behind DK Metcalf, and now Metcalf is out. We just saw that it just wasn't the same. And again, last time they played the Ravens, they had, I believe, 17 carries for 34 yards, right? And that was with DK Metcalf. Aaron Rodgers had 284 passing yards. 148 of those were to DK Metcalf. So he's that guy who can win one-on-one. We saw against the Browns a lot of timing throws, back shoulder throws that just had to be perfect. The last 3 plays of the game, you're throwing fades potentially or other routes to Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They just don't have the same options. It isn't the same offense without DK Metcalf. And so I think that's going to be the same thing against the Ravens. Aaron Rodgers' average depth of target this season is 6.1 yards. That's tied with, again, Cleveland, the Browns' Dylan Gabriel as the shortest in the league. And he's thrown, it is an amazing stat from Aaron Schatz of FTN Fantasy. Aaron Rodgers has thrown 86% of his passes at 15 air yards or shorter this season. So it's all dink and dunk. It's all these screen passes. Those only work if you have the deep threat and somebody who can win one-on-one. And I just don't know without DK Metcalf if they have that against a Ravens team that also just ran all over a Packers defense that is arguably better than the Steelers defense that knew the Ravens probably wanted to run on them because the Ravens had a backup quarterback. So I think that I lean Ravens in this matchup. I think that regardless of whether it's Lamar or Tyler Huntley, I just think they're the better team right now. And I think that Steelers offense, obviously if TJ Watt comes back and plays, that's a big boost for the Steelers defense. But I just think that Steelers offense can't score enough points to win this game without DK Metcalf.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I also do think in the same breath that if there is going to be an Aaron Rodgers vintage performance, this is going to be it. If he has that club in his bag, this is going to be it. But some of the play calling, I say play calling, I'm not blaming Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith had a great play call, for example, when Connor Hayward came in motion on 4th down, took a snap, and ran around the right side for 30 yards. I mean, the plays called at the line by Aaron Rodgers. Some of the stuff last week did not make any sense. On a 4th down, you're going to throw a YOLO go ball down the sideline to Scotty Miller one-on-one against Tyson Campbell. Tell me how that makes sense. Or the 3 in a row to it does, yeah. The 3 in a row to MVS in the end zone. I'll tell you what, to a man, the Browns locker room will tell you, and coaches as well. Like you want to go MVS against Denzel Ward? 3 in a row, God bless you. We'll take that every single time. Now, if DK had been there, that's a little bit more of a fair fight. Absolutely.
That's
but
a great
he wasn't
matchup.
There. Yeah, it's a great matchup. Pro Bowler on Pro Bowler. guys who are making big money going head to head. But, maybe the backside was closed, but he had Kenneth Gainwell. Hey, look at me. I'm in the end zone. Didn't throw the ball because he was locked into MVS. Either way, Aaron has a propensity the last couple of years to just take one-on-one shots, right? Forget about the structure of the offense. I'm taking the one-on-one shot. I'm throwing a back shoulder, right? I'm throwing a go ball.
Who does he trust in that offense right now?
Who does he trust? He trusts MVS, who's only been there a couple of weeks, but obviously they played together
Adam
back in the day. I think Aaron Rodgers,
Scotty Miller,
Adam Thielen, right? But trust Adam Thielen again. It's a month-long relationship, right? Ben Skoronek's his guy,
trust him.
Yeah, more than the others. Calvin
That's
Austin's a big part of this as well, because in the month before, Calvin Austin got hurt. The hammy came in the Detroit game. In the month before, we had talked about it. They had kind of turned the light on with Rodgers throwing deeper, right? Extending and stretching the field a little bit more, but that obviously went backwards this past week. I do think it is going to be Lamar, just for the record. A lot of people push back. Let's tie this to Rodgers into last week and to wrap this one up finally. A lot of people push back on the idea that the Steelers only cared, not about winning, but about avoiding Myles Garrett getting the single-season sack record a week ago. The Browns say yes. Others say yes. TV analysts say yes. The Steelers go no. Zach Taylor today went, no, guys. That's how everybody plays Myles Garrett. And there is truly, I think, truth to both sides of it. Joe Burrow today was asked about potentially Myles Garrett getting the single-season sack record in Cincinnati Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock. Burrow has been sacked 11 times in his career by Myles Garrett, which is tied for the most Garrett has with Lamar Jackson. Obviously, they're both in the same division. So he's used to getting sacked by him. They also have a little bit of a relationship. Listen to what Burrow said.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to overcompensate either way. I'm not going to go out of my way to not let him get the record, and I'm not going to go out of my way to let him get the record either. I'm going to go and play football. There's going to be situations that a sack is the best of the bad outcomes of that play, and maybe I take one. And there's going to be other situations that I'm about to get sacked, and I need to throw it away in that situation. It's such a situational game that I don't think you can go in thinking one way or the other. Every play is so different.
All right, so the football Twitter sphere immediately reacted like, oh, he's going down. People started tweeting photos of Favre and Strahan. Let's be clear. He did not say that. He did not say that at all. He said, I'm going to play football, guys. I'm not worried about the record. I'm going to try to win the game. I hold the ball a while. That's what I do. I got good receivers, and if it means me trying to get them open and holding the ball and I get sacked, so be it. But the words, maybe I take one. Jori, I don't know how the stories or the headlines will be written for the clickbait, but we do know this. Clickbait ain't going away on New Year's Day. The clickbait headline will be, maybe I take one.
Yeah, my thing is that last week everyone kept saying, and Myles Garrett included, was saying that the Steelers were more concerned about him not getting the sack record than they were about winning the game. And now Joe Burrow says, I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about winning the game. And so if a sack makes sense and to win the game, I will do that. And it's kind of like, oh, why is he letting him sack? So I think no one can win in this wonderful world we live in.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, I'm going to play football. Like what do you want? What do you want? He also said that he feels as comfortable behind this offensive line as he's had around any offensive line. Like Joe said, all the right things. Also, getting back to our Psych 101 conversation about Joe that we had 2 weeks ago, they said to Zach Taylor, hey, what's your New Year's resolution? And he went, to beat Cleveland. Okay, good answer. Yay, coach. They asked Joe Burrow, what's your New Year's resolution? He went, to be happy.
It's a good resolution.
Yeah, and then just stared blank-faced at the assembled media with wool cap pulled over face. I mean, not over face, overhead. Over face, that would be different. Maybe then we really could read into it, but we're not. We all want to be happy. Okay, there are other storylines other than those 3 games. Coming up next, we're each going to pick a storyline that interests us to keep an eye on. And maybe I'll ask Ben and Jori for New Year's resolutions as well. Or maybe I won't, because I've long resolved to not make New Year's resolutions. It's inside coverage on Yahoo. It's inside coverage on Yahoo. Happy New Year to you. Andrew Siciliano, Jori, Epstein, Ben Fawkes. There are 16 games this week. No one's on a bye. Obviously, it's the end of the season. We normally do 5 or 6 games to preview. We only did 3, but that doesn't mean there aren't other things to keep an eye on, storylines to watch. Obviously, on Monday, there are going to be coaches fired, GMs perhaps fired as well. A lot of these players, and this is the finality of the NFL. It's something that when you're with the team or you cover the league, you really feel it in a locker room. Like, this is the last time these teams will be together, the ones whose seasons are ending, right? You look around the room and say this room is going to be different a year from now. So there are memories to be had, and there are milestones and incentives to be reached. Ben Fawkes, one interesting thing that you are keeping an eye on.
I feel like I'm being called on to the head of the class here. This is very
I mean, would you like
exciting.
to come to, like, you don't, like, here's your chalk. We, like, go stand.
It's a big day. Last chance in 2025 at the head of the class.
This is.
Yeah,
I can't mess
Hey, you
this
weren't
up.
here
I'm going to
yesterday. If you'd like to
Chicago.
air a grievance, feel free as well. I like whatever you need, bud.
Was that Frank on, or was that why the show was so long with a lot of grievances to air?
No, but
I'm going to Chicago, where the Lions are taking on the Bears. Bears are 3-point favorite, total of 50.5. And I think it's interesting. This is just a stat I've always monitored. It's kind of unbelievable. The Chicago Bears as a franchise have never had a quarterback who has thrown for 4,000 yards. And Caleb Williams is at 3,730. Quick math would mean he needs 270 yards. He's been under 220 yards in 8 games this season. He's only gone over 270 in 4 games. Obviously, you also have the Ben Johnson angle, the Bears going to the playoffs, his former team, the Lions, not going to the playoffs. And I think I'm also interested in kind of how the Lions look, right? We've seen this team the last few years. Dan Campbell had that quote, right? When they lost to the 49ers in that NFC Championship game, you're never really sure if you're going to get back. We don't know the Lions won't get back, but in these past couple of years, they've always been playing for something, basically every single game. This is the first game under him. They really have nothing to play for except pride and maybe to stick it to the Bears a little bit. So I'm curious to see what this game looks like if it evolves and the Bears get a lead. Instead of running the ball, which obviously the Bears are very good at, do they have some extra passes in there for Caleb Williams to try and get over that number and stick it to Ben Johnson a little bit, potentially in a victory? So is that one way the game goes? I'm just an interesting one to watch in a game where otherwise there's not that much on the line. Obviously, the Bears could have a little better seating in the NFC playoff picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if I could just button that up here. So Caleb Williams is at 37-30, Ben, as you said. He is 108 away from the franchise single-season record. And I know they always tell you, don't make it about me. I'm going to make it about me real quick. So the single season record is held by Eric Kramer, who's also a former Lion, started his career there, actually took the Lions to the playoffs with Wayne Fontes and then went to the Bears. And in 1995, under Dave Wanstead, Eric Kramer threw for 3,838 yards. He had Raymond Harris in the backfield, Rashaan Salam, Jeff Graham was a wide receiver, Curtis Conway was a wide receiver. Andrew, what does that have to do with you? Here's what. So this is my 30th season covering the NFL. 30th. My very first season covering the NFL was 1996. The year after Eric Kramer set that single season passing record for the Chicago Bears. No one has come close really since then. Jay Cutler kind of sniffed it. But not only does nobody have 4,000 yards, Eric Kramer's modest mark of 38-30 has stood since 1995 in a passing era. A passing era in the National Football League. That is just bonkers. And I know, oh, hey, big deal. We have a base 10 number system. Why is 4,000 such a big deal? It really isn't, but it is. And it means a lot to Bears fans. I promise you. Jori, what do you got?
Yeah, absolutely. For my game, yes. So I am very excited to watch the Titans play the Jaguars because since they last played them and lost to them, Cam Ward has like sneakily been really showing some improvement and development. So for the first 13 weeks of the season, Cam Ward had 0 to 1 touchdowns per week. He's now had 2 passing touchdowns for 4 straight weeks and has not thrown an interception in 3 weeks. So he went from a 75.2 passer rating over the first 13 weeks to a 95.0 over the last 4 weeks. And then you have this Jacksonville defense that they did well, but Cam Ward was playing well against San Francisco, Kansas City, Cleveland. This is not just about him facing soft defenses, even if some of those teams are stronger than others. And the Titans themselves, with Cam Ward's improvement, or you could say Cam with Titans improvement, obviously you can decide who you want to give the credit to, went from averaging 14.2 points across the first 13 weeks to 26.8 themselves over the last 4. And so obviously there's a buy in there. It's not about games, it was about weeks. But I just thought it was really interesting that even though they've been pretty consistent between those 2 stretches where the defense is giving up about 27.3 points per game, they went from themselves averaging 14.2 to 26.8, which makes me wonder, even though the Jaguars are playoff bound and they look really good, they have had some defensive injuries. Is this going to be one last chance for Cam Ward to say, here's what I look like and here's how much I've improved at the end of my rookie year? And oh, by the way, head coaching candidates, Matt Nagy or otherwise, this is why you should come coach us.
Yeah, early in the season, I'm glad you mentioned Cam Ward. There was, talk about respect and anger about lack of attention from fan bases. We did that yesterday. The Tennessee fan base, small, but never quiet. Why don't we get a primetime game? They're the only team without a primetime game. Well, the Browns didn't have one, but they had a standalone game in London, right? An early window, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time game on week 5. Titans didn't get any of that. We don't have any respect here. No, you don't. That's actually accurate. But people didn't get a chance to see Cam Ward. And while they didn't win a lot of games, matter of fact, they barely won. Jori, to your point, there were throws every week where if you did put on the Titans, you would just go, okay, wow. And it wasn't it wasn't like the home run hitter who struck out 220 times. And by the way, remember when 200 strikeouts was like this horrible scarlet letter? Now, he struck out 200 times. Big deal. Changing sports. But it wasn't like some guy that struck out 200 times but also hit 50 homers. It was a guy that, as the season progressed, cut down on mistakes over and over and over again. Matter of fact, when they came to Cleveland a month ago, he had gone a month at that point without throwing a pick. Now, he threw a pick in that game against the Browns. But he's getting better. He's good. There are wow moments. And as the Titans pick in the top 10 again, and we don't know where they're going to finish, there is not this thought, well, do we need to draft a quarterback again? No, you don't. These are not the Cardinals that took Josh Rosen at 10, and then the next year, English Andrew took Kyler Murray at 1. So Cam Ward is the guy. Speaking of quarterbacks, my thing to watch here. I don't know that Malik Willis is going to play in Week 18. As we sit here, we just get word that Jordan Love was a full participant today in practice, which means he is about to come through the concussion protocol. But if it is Malik Willis, and we spoke yesterday about Kirk Cousins, and that he has now planted his flag, especially in primetime of late, making the announcement that I should be a starting quarterback somewhere next year. The quarterback carousel is always fascinating. And much like I said yesterday, there are always coaches. You didn't see that one coming. There are going to be quarterback decisions, too, that right now you can't wrap your head around. But some teams are going to make dramatic moves. One of those dramatic moves could be somebody writing a big check for Malik Willis if the Packers were to let him out of the building. What kind of tag, if they put a tag on him, they can't put a franchise tag, but like you put a transition tag, you put a tag on him to try to keep him and prevent him from going elsewhere. Let me tell you how good Malik Willis has been of late. So you saw last Saturday night, he threw for a career-high 288, and he had a passer rating of 134.6. He also ran for 2 touchdowns. He was the first Packer quarterback to run for 2 touchdowns in a game since Rodgers did it 7 years ago. When we look at stats, we could we could slide the guardrails wherever we want to. Let's say, minimum 50 attempts or minimum 12 star, something like that. But if you go minimum 50 passing attempts the last 2 seasons, take all the quarterbacks in the NFL with a minimum of 50 passing attempts in 2024 and 2025, Malik Willis has the highest passer rating. Malik Willis of the Green Bay Packers. It's 134.6. He also, again, minimum 50 passes, leads all quarterbacks in the National Football League for completion percentage at 78.7. How about 10.9 yards per attempt? Best in the National Football League, minimum 50 attempts the last 2 years. How about touchdown interception ratio for Malik Willis? 9 to none, to 0. That's best in the NFL the last 2 years. 9 touchdowns, no picks. It is a small sample size. But when given the opportunity, when Love was banged up last year and then this year as well, Malik Willis has proven that he's not only a starter in this league, he should be a well-compensated starter in this league. And just open your mind to the possibility that, say, if the Raiders get the number 1 pick, maybe they just go sign Malik Willis and then use that pick and their other picks to restock a rather a roster that is badly in need of more talent. Just throwing it out there. Malik Willis will be one of the more intriguing free agents to be come the start of the new league year. That's what I'm keeping an eye on. We have time for one more thing before we go. Jori, you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've got some sound for this one, but John Fossil, who is the special teams coach for the Titans, and I got to know him when he was the special teams coach for the Cowboys, gave a little spiel this week about special teams coaches and their fitness for head coaching roles. We know that John Harbaugh obviously took this route and it's worked out well for him, but we rarely see it because teams are so fixated on offense and defense. And I think what we are kind of forgetting is that so many coaches are more CEO, walk around, get the whole culture, get all the different parts of the scheme and the roster together than they are calling plays. Like, a lot fewer head coaches seem to be calling plays these days. And so if that's the case, the special teams coaches are constantly developing. They're constantly putting guys out there who just got in the building and they have to be out there on a quick turnaround. They have to keep them motivated, and really the skill set does transfer. So I'll let John say it even better, but if they are going to, I think teams should be giving these guys interviews, and I think John Fossil should be top of their list because there is no better guy in the league than John Fossil. And I know there are people who say that about like everyone in the world, but like that is the most wholesome man in any NFL role in this league.
In the special teams world, you're as close to being a head coach, I think, as anything. You know, you're in tune situationally. Every snap of the game, you're in tune with the 48, the 53, the 69-man roster and how it all, fits. You're coaching players 23 through 69 on the roster. They're starting 22. You might not touch much, but I'm not trying to make a case. I'm just saying I just feel like, if they're looking at everything, I think there's a big batch of coaches that are fantastic that are overlooked.
Yeah.
Tough to do better than that. Yeah.
Yeah. I love Ben. You're Ben. I love Bones, Ben Bones, for a number of reasons. I thought he did a good job too as an interim head coach when he had that opportunity with the Rams. Maybe not the wins that they needed, but he did a good job. And I also tip my cap to him because when the Rams first moved here, his father, obviously the former Giants head coach, had a home in Manhattan Beach, and Bones commuted from Manhattan Beach to all the way up to the Valley. Like, that's next level dedication. I can't even, if that gets you ready for any challenge in life. So I would support him getting those interviews and getting one of those jobs. What do you got, Ben?
So a few weeks ago, I had my one more thing on the Jaguars potentially getting the number 1 seed in the AFC. They're going to miss out on that. But they will be making the playoffs. And although Liam Cohen says they haven't been getting a lot of respect, they have from bettors. The Jaguars are tied with the Bears 11-4-1 against the spread, the best mark in the NFL. And they're going to be 12.5-point home favorites, could even go even higher in this last week against the Titans. They're 6-0-1 as a favorite, and they've won 7 straight games against the spread. This is a team that if they win and cover against the Titans, they will be 12-4-1 against the spread, which will surpass the 2007 team led by David Garrard as the best team in Jaguars history since 1995 against the spread. So a very good team for bettors. We'll see how they do on the field, as they say, in the playoffs as well, but been a really solid team for bettors throughout the season and especially lately.
And a great first season, regardless of where they end up here in the seedings, for not only head coach Liam Cohen, but the youngest GM in the National Football League as well, James Gladstone, who came from here, actually St. Louis, LA, and then into Jacksonville. So yesterday we had, was it yesterday? 2 days ago, I don't remember, an airing of grievances. I've truly lost track of days here at the end of the year. We had fun at the Frank Costanza thing. For my one more thing, I want to go the exact opposite of that. And on a serious note, and a far lighter note, just show some gratitude. And I really do mean this. It is the end of the year. We joked earlier at the beginning of the show that I'm sitting here like dressed like this doing a show from my house. I am very, very, very grateful for that, and grateful for everyone that works on this show, which is for me a new venture. For all of you, it is not. You guys have been there, done that, and I'm just the new guy here. So thank you to Jori, and thank you to Ben, and thank you to Charles, and thank you even to Frank. Yes, even to Frank. And thank you to Jason Fitz as well, because you guys have truly made me feel welcome. I love working with all of you. I love doing this show, not just because I could, sit here and wear clothes that I might have worked out in this morning and wear a hat in my basement. I'm grateful for that, certainly, but I'm grateful for all of you. And that goes to the top as well. That goes to Spoon and Sam and Matt and Brett, and it goes to Madison and Austin and Stone and everyone who obviously grinds every day to get this show on the air. In pod form, in video form, in any form. So I thank you, each and every one of you. And obviously, I thank those who listen to us every day, on your walk, on your drive, on your run, on your hike, wherever you do, or watch us, Yahoo Sports TV, yahoosports.tv, the YouTube page, the app, in whatever form you take in the video. We are exceedingly appreciative of you as well. Without you, we're not here, truly. And we hope to be here for a long, long time. We certainly know we will be here next Monday for our first show of 2026, taking a look at the 2026 NFL playoff field. Although technically it's the 2025 playoff field. Sometimes Wikipedia gets that wrong and goes the year ahead, but you know what I'm saying. The playoffs will be set. Ben, Jori, Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year to you and to all of our listeners.
Happy New Year.
Absolutely. Be safe. Don't get too crazy, folks. Don't get too crazy. And Happy New Year. We'll see you next year. So long, everybody.